Hello everyone! I hope you're ready for another adventure, because today, Wayne reads Minette's Feast. Always remember that as we go through these amazing stories and read these amazing adventures, all you have to do is press the CC button in your YouTube link in order to follow along with the words. Now I think that Bumblebee will be perfect to join us for today's adventure. Now that Bumblebee's here, let's jump in. Minette's Feast. Minette Mimosa, McWilliam's child, was a very lucky cat. Perhaps the luckiest cat in all of Paris. Day after day, she could hear the bells of the Santa Clotilde tolling the hour. And day and night, she could smell the delicious mayonnaise, hollandaise, colettes, cheese soufflés, and duck pâtés waiting in the pots and pans of her owner, Julia Child. But life had not always been like this for Minette. No, not at all. Several years earlier, Julia Child had moved to Paris with her husband, Paul. They had no children, nor did they have any pets. But they had each other. Every weekend, arm in arm, they wandered down the cobblestone streets, poking into little shops and peeking in the hidden courtyards. And every time they went out for a walk, they enjoyed a fine meal. They nibbled croissants in cafes where cats curled on chairs. They munched on baguettes in bistros where birds warbled in cages. They dined on rolls in restaurants where little white poodles nestled at ladies' feet. "You are the butter to my bread," Paul said to Julia. Julia and Paul's apartment was dark and so cold in the winter that they had to wear coats in the living room. There were birds on the windowsill and mice in the walls. The kitchen was up a narrow flight of stairs and there was no refrigerator, only an icebox. But this was home, and Julia and Paul warmed it with family and friends. There was only one thing missing. A house without a cat is like life without sunshine. And so Julia and Paul adopted Minette, a mischievous, energetic pussycat with a lovely speckled coat, or shall we say Minette adopted Julia and Paul. Julia and Paul were charmed by Minette's delicate whiskers, her superior nose, and her quick little paws. Here was a cat so thoroughly enjoyed life's many pleasures, long naps, soft laps, and of course, lunch. But for Minette, no ordinary meal would do. Like any self-respecting French cat, Minette wouldn't dream of eating food out of a can. What a thrill to pounce on an unsuspecting bird. How delightful to crunch a fresh-caught mouse, devoured on the living room rug. Julia spent mornings in the marketplace, buying meat from Le Boucher, bread from Le Boulanger, and cheese from La Cremière, and cake from La Pastière. Afterwards, she'd make a splendid lunch for herself, Paul, and offer Minette the leftovers. Minette might even take a nibble, but of course, mouse and bird were much preferred. Sometimes, nice old fish lady at the marketplace gave Julia luscious fish heads for Minette. Julia would cook them up in a pot, perhaps add a dollop of scrumptious chicken liver custard. Minette might even take a nibble, but it seemed that mouse and bird were really much preferred. Julia was determined to improve her cooking, so she went to the marketplace for advice. At the vegetable stand, an old lady showed her how to tell a good potato from a bad one. At the supply store, Julia bought enough knives to fill a pirate ship. She carted home a giant cookbook. She even learned how to stir 2 pots at the same time. Minette was not impressed. And so Julia signed up for classes at La Cordon Bleu, the famous cooking school. When Chef Bugnard, the teacher, taught her to slice and dice, mince and chop, she paid close attention. "I had never taken anything so seriously," she later wrote. Husband and cat accepted. At home, Minette took her job seriously too. She perfected her hunting skills by chasing Brussels sprout tied to a string. As the months passed, Julia became quite the gourmet cook. She banked and blanched, blended and boiled, drained and dried, dusted and fried. She floured, flipped, pitied, plucked, rinsed, roasted, sizzled, and skimmed. And when she wasn't trimming, toasting, topping, she was washing, whipping, and whisking. At Julia's feet, Minette purred with contentment. The smells were heavenly, the taste delightful. Still, there was a mouse. One chilly fall morning, Julia decided to test a new recipe. Perhaps it would even be better than a mouse. She went to the marketplace and bought a nice special cut of meat. She rubbed it with salt and pepper, showered it with herbs and spices. Then she placed it on the windowsill and waited for the flavors to develop. For 3 days, Minette waited too. Finally, the meat was ready to cook. Julia eased it into the pan, tucked some vegetables around it, and popped the pan into the oven. The meat bubbled and spat. When it was done, Julia proudly carried the platter to the table. Ooh la la, magnifique! For 3 days, Julia and Paul feasted on the leftovers while Minette waited for a nibble. When Julia finally laid the platter on the floor, bits of meat still clung to the bone. "Would you like to try this, pussycat?" said Julia. Minette creeped up to the platter. She sniffed and twitched, and then she pounced. "Oh la, magnifique!" Minette attacked the bone, gnawing it and chewing it and rolling on the floor on the ground. She frisked and flopped, darted and batted. She tiptoed and hopped, danced and pratted. She jumped and rolled, knurled and stretched, raced and ran, gurgled and purred, and then she licked herself all over and took a nice long nap. Minette Mimosa, McWilliam's child, was a very lucky cat, perhaps the luckiest in all of Paris. She lived upstairs in an old gray house, 1 block from the Rivière Signée. Day and night she could hear the bells of Saint-Éclaté tolling the hour, and day and night she could smell the delicious smells of mayonnaise, hollandaise, coulettes, cheese soufflés, and duck pâtés, waiting from the pots and pans of her owner, Julia Child. Bon appetit, Minette. Still, there will always be a mouse. Well, that was a lot of fun. What did you think, Bumblebee? I like that part too. We'll see you on the next adventure, okay? And we'll see you on the next adventure, here with Wayne Reads. Thank you for joining us, and we can't wait to see you again. Bye-bye.